Hey, it's Francis Lam, host of the Splendid Table, and today we have in the studio Padma Lakshmi. You probably know her as a longtime host of Top Chef or from her own show, Taste the Nation, which I love. We're going to talk about a new book, Padma's All-American and Thanksgiving. So what's more All-American than that? Hey, Padma, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
It is so great to see you. I want to talk about Thanksgiving.
Okay.
The spirit of the season.
Yes.
And looking at the beautiful American flag and you standing in front of it, I think of Thanksgiving in a lot of ways as kind of the ultimate American holiday because it's not based on anyone's particular religious beliefs or cultural beliefs, right? It's this idea of gratitude is something we can all share. And even the controversy about it, I think, is pretty American, right? In that, oh, did we, steal this thing that indigenous people gave to the settlers and, take it away from them? But in a way, I also feel like that's also American because there aren't that many countries where the idea of hey, are we okay here is kind of supposed to be built into our DNA.
Well, I think it is very American, not only because the indigenous people gave it to us, leaving aside that the settlers stole it.
Right.
I think it's also American because it is an immigrant holiday.
Yeah.
It is about sharing the gratitude that you have for Mother Nature with those who come from afar. I mean, it's not like we're just celebrating, every Thanksgiving ceremony because they have, indigenous people in different indigenous communities in America, they have Thanksgiving every month. It's a ritual that happens not just once a year. The colonial settlers that came just happened to appropriate it, but they didn't even appropriate it. Thanksgiving only became something several hundred years later.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly, as a way to also bridge the gap after Civil War, I believe. And so the only reason that we know about it is because we wrote it into common, conventional American history to a bit whitewash what not me, but, what the original settlers did, which is spread disease. So it's, yes, it's got a lot of baggage and it's very controversial. But I love Thanksgiving because it doesn't involve presents and it doesn't involve religion. And my only holiday that I like more than Thanksgiving is Halloween. Because you get to dress up and be a monster, and it's sort of kosher that day. But I love Thanksgiving. I don't always celebrate it because when my daughter's not there, I don't feel like it. So when she's at her dad's, for instance, I go to Paris.
Okay, sure.
So I do, and which is wonderful. And actually, they do a great Thanksgiving spread that just looks like it's out of the Age of Innocence at the Ralph Lauren store in Paris. So I have even done that for Thanksgiving a couple of years, when I was there. But it's a holiday I like because it allows you to share in some traditions of food with your family and your friends, and it's cozy. And I'm not even that big of a turkey fan.
Sure.
Though you can get my recipe for Thanksgiving turkey and apple gravy in the New York Times. But what we do is we make the turkey pretty much the same way because I'm more interested in the gravy that comes out of it. Yeah. And I make pictures of it to use the next day in turkey pot pie. Oh. So I've got pie dough ready to go, and then the next day becomes about taking all the roasted vegetables, taking that gravy, adding more vegetables if we need to, and, just shredding that meat and making pot pie. And then we eat that pot pie along with stuffing and cranberry chutney and everything else all weekend long.
Oh, that's good. Wait, apple gravy. Tell me about apple gravy.
It's really easy. I mean, basically, I make the turkey much like I make my roast chicken, which is I stuff the cavity with garlic and bay leaves, rosemary and black pepper, ginger, and citrus fruit,
cool.
Just to perfume it a little bit, give it a nice citrus aroma. And then around the bird, I have apples and a little bit of oranges again, and then just red onion, garlic, ginger. And so then I pour water over that. So my roasting pan is about 3 or 4 inches deep. And it's to make gravy. And so that water and those apples and all those aromatics break down with the turkey fat.
God.
And for years, I got my bird at Heritage Butchers in the Essex Street Market because they do breeds that haven't been interbred since the 1800s. So my turkeys
Like
don't always
flavor.
look sort of pumped up and beautiful. And
Oh my God, look at you. It's almost like you've modeled before.
But they are very tasty. And so that's my Thanksgiving. And then, we always pick a country. And we do the same sides. We do some kind of potatoes, some kind of green beans, some kind of stuffing, and other dishes like squash. But we do them in the vein of, the flavors of Morocco or Chinese flavors or Mexican flavors or whatever we're feeling like. We do everything but Indian because I don't want to eat Indian food on Thanksgiving.
Days
yeah, except for the chutney. Yeah. The cranberry chutney is our Indian thing, and it's delicious.
I don't know what your cranberry chutney is, but I feel like I have a mixed relationship to cranberry on the Thanksgiving table because as Samin Nosrat famously every year she says to me, it's like, no, that is the one source of acid on the table.
Correct.
Like, you need
I was
that
just
tartness.
Gonna say,
but I'm like, but I don't love the flavor of it. Like, it seems one note. But like, if you're talking about chutney, if you're adding ginger, aromatics, maybe some spices, I'm like, I can get down with that for sure.
Yeah, in Tangy Tart Hot and Sweet, that cranberry chutney recipe is there in my last cookbook, which came out so many years ago. But it is something that you need for the turkey. You need it for every element, and I use like probably a quarter cup of that for every plateful of food. And she's right. There's no other way to get acid on. I mean, there is, but that's the easiest way, and it looks beautiful. That dark vermilion burgundy is so gorgeous. So I lobby for cranberry. I don't like the stuff that comes out of a can that you slice like Jell-O, but if that's all you got, that's great too.
Like, you could like mash that up with ginger and spices, and that would be cool too.
That's how I learned to cook, actually. I was a latchkey kid, and I was also a vegetarian. So my mom would buy cans and cans of cream of potato soup or vegetarian vegetable soup, and I would, a chef friend of mine would say, church it up. I would say, doctor it up, and
church it up is so good.
I know. And just so I would put, sliced jalapenos or a little bit of dried oregano, and that I started doing that when I was about 9 years old, and I think from there it just expanded, and eventually I kicked the can to the side.
It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. We all have our stepping stones.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay, I definitely want to get into some of the recipes in the book that I think would be great on a Thanksgiving table, but I want to pull back a little bit. Actually, one of the first pages of the book, in the introduction, there was this great quote, and I wrote it down. I'm going to read you to you.
Oh, great.
I've always felt Indian and American, but I've never felt that others considered me just as American as they were. I've always felt like an outsider. But in making Taste the Nation, I felt more American than I ever have. And I love you saying that because the show is about you going to different immigrant communities. So lots of people who may have that experience of like, people don't look at me and think of me as, quote, just as American as they are. And, be they Lebanese, Mexican, Turkish. But you're right about how their stories remind you of how great America is. So tell us about some of your favorite people that you met.
I mean, the reason I say that is because not only did traveling, just literally road by road, community by community through our country, made me not only feel more American, it made me feel less othered, obviously, but also it gave me hope in our country. It's a really odd time where a lot of Americans are very polarized, and then it's easy to feel demoralized about a lot of the
how can we ever unify again?
Right. And also a lot of the principles that we thought were so foundational to America are being challenged, like the immigration piece, which is obviously a central theme to Taste the Nation and this book. I loved going through the country because I found out that my story was specific to me, but also very universal. And I found that again and again and again. And in fact, in Padma's All-American, between each chapter, so between the appetizers and all the way to the desserts and drinks, you have profiles, these essays about some of the people that I met on the road. There's a wonderful woman named Shamim Popal who has a restaurant called Lapis in D.C. So if anyone's ever in D.C., please go check out Lapis. And she made the single most delicious thing I ate across all episodes, which is this beautiful Afghan rice dish called Kabuli Pulao. And there's a recipe for it in the book. And, she said that she's had Afghan Americans, who've been born here, completely grown up here, or Afghan refugees who've come and who are under 30 years old and have eaten her food and say, this is not kabuli pulao. Kabuli pulao doesn't have, these raisins and carrots and sugar and cinnamon and all this stuff. And she said, yes, it does. You just have never lived in an Afghanistan that hasn't had scarcity. And Shameen is our parents' age probably, and she remembers that Afghanistan in the 70s and the late 60s where it was very abundant. And so, not only do immigrants come here and contribute to American history, they also carry the history of where they're from in a preserved way, and that's certainly true for my Indian parents. They're more Indian than the Indians back home because they came here so young that, in a way, I mean, we go back all the time, but still, something about being a transplant makes that part of you frozen in time.
Yeah. And it's like, everything around you is so different now. You have to hold on to what you remember really tight, right? Yeah.
And I found that again and again too. So it really made me understand my mother a lot more. I remember talking to this wonderful Nigerian singer in Houston, and, she said it was a real eye-opener for her because she didn't know she was Black until she came to America. She just thought she was Nigerian.
Yeah.
But what she realized is raising kids in this country, she needed to prepare them for being considered Black or not like white Americans because that's how they were going to be treated.
They're never going to be different, right?
Right. She said, when that cop pulls over my son, you can't tell him, oh, no, I'm not that kind of Black,
Right.
Because they're living in this country, they're dressing like every other American kid, and so I have to prepare them. So in doing that for my child, it actually made me more American. And so I heard so many stories about what it's like to be an American from different angles and perspectives that were just slightly shifted.
Yeah.
And it was very moving. It was moving. It was fun. It was also horrifying to hear some stories that people went through. And also, we went to see indigenous communities, one in Martha's Vineyard, and in Cape Cod, one in Arizona, and that was eye-opening too.
So much of the country is so polarized, right? And what that literally means is we are on opposite sides of something. We're on different poles of something, right? And it is hard to remember. That when I was growing up, I think when you were growing up, I think we probably shared this as the children of immigrants, or in your case, you.
I am an immigrant,
Yeah, yourself an immigrant. This idea that even though we feel different and we feel other people look at us differently, in a way that makes us feel like, our choice to be American is more present. And part of what that means is seeing how other people choose to be American. And even if we think it's not perfect.
And it's not our way of being American.
And it's not our way of being American. And we can criticize it even as we love it all the more, right? Because my parents chose this home, and I see what they were able to make, the life they were able to make for themselves and for me, really, for their children, right? And have gratitude for this place because this was a place that where they were able to do that. So I love this country because of that story, even though I can see how imperfect we are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I owe everything I am and have to America. If my mother was not allowed to come here and build a new life for us after she divorced my father, I think our life would have been much less fortunate and more difficult, especially as a divorcee in very conservative South India at the time. But I will say this. I will say, yes, the country feels divided, but what's missing in all of this, I feel, is really nuance. And, there are things that I share in common with that Nigerian American mother that I spoke about. There are also things where I diverge.
Yeah.
And that would be true for any 10 people that I meet crossing this nation by road. And I think that is what the strength of America is, though, is that we don't all adhere to exactly the same things, but we found a way, more or less, as you say, imperfect, to live amongst each other and do so in a way that's a little bit of a compromise for all of us, for a greater good.
Yeah.
I was listening to this, the last speech that Reagan made as president, and he says, what makes this country different is that we share a set of principles. We may not share the same ethnicity, we may not share the same culture exactly, but what we do share is hopefully a culture of opportunity and freedom and shared values of what we hold dear, so that those common things can allow us the freedom to live as we want, as long as it's in harmony.
Yeah.
I'm grossly paraphrasing here, but
I think I know the speech you're talking about that Ronald Reagan gave, and I think he actually ends it by saying, or the theme of it is we need to make ourselves that way because we need to be a place where people around the world want to keep coming.
Exactly. That we must continue to welcome immigrants here because they are who make this country.
Yeah.
Just make it. Never mind make it great or make it great again or all that stuff.
Our population grows because.
Yeah, by the way, yes. And I think it's hard for some Western, I call them European Americans. I don't just call them white people, because they too, because I want to underscore that they too are descendants of immigrants.
Yeah.
I remember I was on The View and Ann Coulter was there. And, this was years and years ago, and she had just come out with a book called Adios America or something. It was just complete hogwash. And, she was sitting between me and Ana Navarro. And I was very afraid. I thought, oh, my God, it's live television. I'm going to get in a cat fight, And Ana Navarro was really smart. She said, just remember, there's a line that you won't cross, but there's not a line she won't cross. So I was kept professional, and I kept myself professional. And, I think at one point, Anna, though, got a little riled up, and she said, Anna, I just want to remind you that you were sitting between two immigrant women, neither of whom were ever anyone's maid. Not that there's anything wrong with being anyone's maid, but she, her point was that we just need that labor, but every person has something to contribute.
Yeah.
In our culture, in our country, in our economy, in our agriculture, in our politics and healthcare and everything, education, So this country would cease to function and would cease to be a world-dominating power if you just close the gates.
Right.
And we will see that happen. We are already seeing that happen in food prices. We will continue to see it as farms struggle. We forget that over, 80% of farms in this country are still family-owned. Yeah. And they need the help.
And the workers on those farms are largely immigrants,
Yeah, what are you talking about, And so I got tired of just getting on my soapbox with the ACLU and saying the same things, and I thought I want to do this in a more positive way, in a more fun way, and in a language that people are used to me speaking. And that, Taste the Nation started out as a book. It was always called the Padma's All-American, but it started out as a book, and then I put it down to do the show version. And then I felt like I couldn't go as deep as I wanted because each episode was just a 30-minute episode. And so that's how I went back to do the book. And I could delve deeper, and I could include recipes that we didn't have time for, and deeper stories that, in television, you always make these difficult choices. There's never time for most of the stuff you want to include. So you just have to make sure you cover one thing well.
Yeah.
And you just don't want to be that person who sort of ice skates through.
Right, 5 seconds on this, 8 seconds on that.
That's not
a 2-minute beat on this, right?
That's not my bag, there's all kinds of travel food shows, obviously, but I want to go deeper. And there were things that I couldn't address in the show that I was happy to go back and revisit for the book.
Yeah. And I love that it's a cookbook, too, because you could have easily written a beautiful narrative about it. But, you are someone who really do love to cook, and it has been almost 20 years since you wrote a cookbook, because you probably started writing that book in probably 2005, if it came out in 2007.
Yeah, I'm sure I was writing in 2004 too. And what's interesting to me, and I have to say, I am a little bit not concerned, but I feel a little insecure about Padma's All-American because I want it to do well. And it's not an easy, chicken dinner on a weeknight book. There are over 3/4 of the book are recipes that you can do on a weeknight.
Sure.
But, there's just Nigerian goat and Cambodian fish curry. And, they're both delicious. And again, easy. You don't have to be a chef. I'm not. But I felt that way with Tangy Tart Hot and Sweet as well, which came out in 2007. And then 14 years later, they wanted to reissue it. So I was set to rewrite the introduction, and I read it, and I thought, I don't want to change anything. Like, it still holds true. So we just corrected some of the typos and things, and it came out, and then Apple picked it as one of its best books of 2021.
Oh, cool.
And I thought somebody should tell Apple that this is a really old book. It's not a best book of 2021. It's actually a best book of 2014 or 2007 when it originally came out. But I feel a little bit vindicated because a lot of the things that I was talking about in that book have just become commonplace now, like harissa or, all these different ingredients that, makrut lime leaves or, anything that you can just get now, fish sauce, in any supermarket, which is nice. So I'm hoping that the same thing will happen with this one. I think now, because of social media, we've all found our own communities.
Yeah.
And so I hope the various communities that are featured in Padma's All-American will also cross-pollinate each other, as I have in a way in this book. And that's really, to me, what's amazing about America is that we're this microcosm of the world's cultures, and that includes food, of course.
Yeah. So let's get to some of the food that's in the book. And, as I was reading it, with an eye towards Thanksgiving, again, this all-American theme, but I thought there were so many dishes that to me felt like, oh my God, that would be amazing on a Thanksgiving table. And, we were sort of talking about this a little bit briefly before, and it was funny because, like, when I posited that question to you, like, right away you rattled off like 3 or 4 dishes. I'm like, oh yeah, I had that on my list. I was going to ask you about that one.
Well, the one I like, which is really easy to do, is a Cuban recipe called calabaza con mojo.
Okay.
And that mojo sauce is really easy. It's a bright citrus sauce with oregano and garlic, super easy to make up. And you can use that on any roasted vegetable or even on fish, but we show it with Caribbean pumpkin or calabaza. And, I just did an adaptation of that recipe where we used acorn squash, and it worked beautifully. And, I love squash, and it's such a beautiful fall vegetable, and it's lovely. And so that's an easy recipe that basically you can even make ahead. There's also, if you like mashed potatoes on your table but are bored of your regular mashed potatoes, there is a dish called Podimas, Podimas, and it is a mild smashed potato dish that's really easy to make that usually goes inside a dosa, which is an South Indian crepe, rice and lentil crepe.
And they're like...
They can be big, like, a poster size.
And like beautiful and rolled up with this filling inside, right?
Mm-hmm. So that filling is Podimas. But in India, we also make that potato curry or smashed potato with rice dishes as well as a side dish. And all it is mashed potatoes that you peel and cool, and then you just knead them with your fingers. And it's actually great to keep kids busy. I mean,
wash your hands first.
Wash your hands first, of course. But and then all it needs is some tempering of spices with some little bit of shallot and curry leaves and some fried lentils. It's just all in one little wok in oil that takes you literally 3 minutes with some turmeric.
Just frying those spices.
And then drizzling that over the salted boiled smashed potato. That also can be made, hours before. And so if you have a child who's 6, 7, 8, 5, you can just put them in a corner with a big bowl and have them do that. And then a cousin or somebody...
my kid and having to wash their hair after it, but sure.
A cousin or somebody older who's a teenager can just fry up the spices, or you can, in like literally 2 minutes, pour it over and make them mix it up. That's one dish done. The calabaza is another dish, which is just roasted in the oven, and then the mojo sauce is whisked together.
And that's just like lime, garlic.
Yeah. I use sour orange, but if you don't have sour orange or a Latin market near you, you can use orange and lime together in equal parts with the zest. And that also, that's just drizzled. That's it. There's another cabbage dish, which I love. There's 2 cabbage dishes. It's actually 3 in the book, but 2 that I'm thinking of. One is called poriel. And poriel is a name for a subset of stir-fried South Indian curries, which has coconut, and again, those same tempered spices, curry leaves, a couple of fried lentils, mustard seed. That's it.
Yeah.
And a few dried red chilies. And you just shred the cabbage, saute it, add this at the end, stir it, salt. Again, all these dishes, because
But like
I
the
was
sweetness of the cabbage.
exactly, and it just cooks down. Because I was raised by a working single mom, all of my recipes that are weeknight recipes tend to be really time efficient and mostly dump and stirs. So, maybe some of the ingredients like curry leaves or makrut lime leaves you'll have to get from your ethnic grocer or order online. They should be good by the time they get to you anywhere in the country. Then you can make anything. There's no particular like technical skill involved in any of these recipes. Some of them are more fiddly, and I always say in the head note, like, this may be something you do on a Saturday.
Yeah, sure.
Like the kabuli pulao. But those are some of the recipes that I think would be wonderful. I also love a kale salad because I feel like we never get enough fresh greens at Thanksgiving. And that is beautiful for the season because it also has Granny Smith apple and pomegranate seeds in it. Again, something you can make before and even dress the night before.
The nice thing about kale salad is if you dress like a lettuce salad,
it's gone.
It would be soup. It would be gross. But a kale salad you can dress, like you said, even a day before, and the kale holds up to the
It
dressing.
certainly does, yeah, depending on how finely you shred it, but sure. And I love that salad, and I have other people in my lives who now make that salad every Thanksgiving without fail.
What's the dressing on that?
It's a yuzu vinaigrette that's very easy. It's just a little bit of yuzu, olive oil, some balsamic vinegar, some sea salt. Very simple.
I never thought of that.
Super simple. I never buy dressing anymore, so I always make my dressings. But also a great dish, which is an indigenous dessert that you can make for dessert for Thanksgiving, is the blackberry slumpish. And I say slumpish because, mine is not completely done in the oven. And somebody who works with me and has for 10 years, his mother gave us that recipe, Anthony's mom. So thank you, Mrs. Jackson from Arkansas, gave us that recipe. And it's a beautiful recipe. If you're scared of doing pie crust or pie dough, but you want to have a homemade dessert, this blackberry slumpish is super, super easy. And it's basically like a crumble. You can do it on the stovetop or finish it in the oven or whatever. But it's wonderful, and it's really forgiving. And it's a crowd pleaser, especially with a simple scoop of vanilla ice cream. I love the hot blueberries, commingling with this cold ice cream, and just
it's like one of the great pleasures, like watching it melt a little bit, but you're like, oh, I still want the actual
the hot
ice cream.
And cold in the same bite. It's wonderful. And again, that's a dessert that you can have kids help you with.
You're so into having your kids help you.
Yes, I am, because I want them to be occupied in something constructive, but I feel like I need to teach my child how to feed herself well before she goes off to college. So the best way to give your children the gift of good eating long after you are gone is to involve them from an earliest age as possible in the process of cooking. And you don't tell them what to do, you just show them what to do, and you make them be present in the kitchen, whether they're just shelling peas or breaking the ends off beans or peeling potatoes. Keep their hands busy, keep them next to you. Not only is it a way to spend time with them, but a child who has a hand in making her own food will be more likely to eat it. And they feel a sense of pride, they feel a sense of proprietorship over that dish, and they share it with people, and that becomes ingrained in them as a moment that they had not only about food, but it becomes a moment about family. And you hit two very important parts of being human at once.
I actually love how you have your mother in the book at points and you have your daughter in the book at points, and also this very American experience of raising a child who's not exactly of the same ethnic background as yourself and cooking
she's
for her.
biracial. And that's why we have biracial latkes in the book. So, there are some very traditional latkes that were adapted from Russ and Daughters, who I also filmed with for the Jewish episode. And, when we were making them, we didn't make it all up. We had sort of half a batch left. And I had some other people coming, and I just thought, some green chili, a little bit of shredded ginger in here would be so lovely. Maybe a little coriander leaf, and that's how biracial latkes came about. And people love them,
I love that.
So if you want them traditionally, you can. But we make those all winter long.
And you know what? And that sounds very American.
Yeah. I don't like sour cream or applesauce with my latkes. You can, of course, it's very traditional. I eat mine with mint chutney. Because again, you need the acid. It's such a fried food that you need something to brighten it up.
Yeah. And again, it's like the whole world comes together in your home and in our country. So thank you so much, Padma. It's been so great talking with you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.